you're as excited about the opportunities that AI has to offer and excited about the things that you've seen as I am. I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn. So I'm going to be talking a little more experimental here about retrieval augmented generation. This is probably the only time I'm going to use that word because it's a mouthful to say anyway. So, my experimentation that led me to this talk started with maybe a minor existential crisis. That's what I was going to call it until I heard Dave talk, and now I think I'm going to call it a crisis-tunity. That sounds much better. But I'm going to take you guys along for the ride. So over the summer, a report came out on the potential impact of AI on the economy and productivity, and it had some very interesting quotes. The first one that I have here is, current generative AI and other technologies have the potential to automate work activities that absorbs 60 to 70% of employees' time. Wow, right? And then the next one, half of today's work activities could be completely automated by 2030, between 2030 and 2060. And I don't know about you, but 2030 is not that far away. There's another quote that I didn't put up here, but it also says the biggest impact is going to be to sales, marketing, and customer support. And, as Mike noted, I'm the director of marketing. So at this point, I'm feeling a little bit like, glad I spent 20 years learning that, and what's going to be next, right? That's what we have to ask ourselves. And so I did what any sane person would do when they read that everything you know and have worked on is going to be automated in the next 6 years or so. And I said, why wait? I wonder what I could automate right now. And so what you're going to be hearing today is a little bit about my experience with building automations. And you're going to start with some challenges. We've already identified them. I've heard people asking, how do you make sure your content that you're getting back is correct? If you've asked ChatGPT several things, you'll find that you have some editing to do, primarily because ChatGPT doesn't have its own opinion, so it's not going to give you something that lines up with your opinion unless you are really specific about asking it. And to test that out, I asked them about what their opinion was on the outcome of the Super Bowl. They have no opinion or feeling. And then the other challenge that people ask when first using ChatGPT is, if we all just ask it to write us a blog post on a topic, aren't we going to come up with 1 million blog posts that are exactly the same? And the answer is not quite. It's a little random, right? Randomness is built in, so they're going to be slightly different, but they will all be fairly generic and similar. So who has tried to use ChatGPT to write content, and who's had it write it perfect the first time without any editing, right? Or the second time or the third time? That's a challenge if you're wanting to automate what you're doing, right? And then also, who has used image generation, maybe Mid-Journey, Stable Diffusion? Who gets perfect images right away? They're getting better, but typically what I find is it's really great at making videos of disco puppies, images, not videos. But when you want something that's a little more realistic, you have to work with it, and you have to do some editing and some improvements there. So how do you overcome these challenges? You've actually seen some examples today, which are much more polished than the examples that I'm going to show you. But really, you have to provide context, which is your own voice, your own content. Each one of you has been entrusted with a ministry that has your own flavor, if you will. And so you have to provide that context. And then for automation, you need a proven prompt that provides consistent results for one task. And that will allow you to get consistent results. And then to avoid some of the randomness, you're going to actually do some post-processing with code to force it to be along your brand identity, all of that. So this is what that looks like, or at least my iteration of it. And I do apologize to Andrew and all the people that are much more technical than me. This is a marketer's version of it. But essentially what you do is you ingest the content. It becomes a vector store, which is readable. And then you have your task, which is your proven prompt. And you're able to execute that on the large language model and then post-process it afterwards to get your specific design and visual results. So here's an example. Whenever I have a blog post or a podcast, I have a whole checklist of things that I do, right? One is to create a social media post with a compelling quote. And so my manual process for that is to read the content and pick out a good quote. And that takes me about 10 minutes because I have to keep rereading it until I get the quote that I want. And then I copy and paste it onto a designed social media template that one of my designers has created. So it takes me about 15 minutes total, which feels like a long time. Using the workflow that I demonstrated, you can import the content directly into the large language model, execute the prompt that has already been created, get the response, and add the response to the design template. One of the nice things about code that I learned is you can actually output how much time it took. So this task that took me 15 minutes to manually do took a grand total of 3 seconds for an AI to do. So as you can see, there's a lot of opportunity to speed up your work. If you have your own list of tasks and they're 10 to 15 minutes each, you can gain a lot of time back in your life. And this is what it looks like. I have this blog post. This is just showing the template. It is using OpenAI's API, and the response it gives is a quick summary as well as a quote. And this blog post happens to be on generative AI and its impacts on SEO. And so you can see it takes that response and then posts it onto this nicely designed template. And I have a graphic that is my brand colors, my brand fonts, my logo, and does exactly what I need because it's in my own words, right? Because it's a quote from my content. So as you're sitting there, I'm hoping that you probably have a list of tasks that you do like this, right? Every time a broadcast comes out, you probably have emails, social media, blog posts, whatever. What I'm going to encourage you to do is start with that list, take a look at that list, and that is your starting point for automating these tasks. And I'm going to also encourage you to think about this in terms of your own voice. So how do you do these tasks? What is your workflow? And how can you pull your brand identity, your ministry's mission out of that workflow? Because everybody here has been entrusted with a ministry that has a voice. It has a specific tone, a specific mission that it is trying to accomplish. And we don't need more generic content out there, right? We need to amplify your brand voice. So bringing this back to our theme of kingdom stewards, one of the reasons we picked that verse is because the steward that was entrusted with one talent, his challenge there was he actually felt the weight of stewardship. more than the joy of his master, right? He feared the weight, and that's why he hid. And as I look around today, and even over the last couple of years, right, we had COVID, so the way we do work is never going to be the same, right, because everything's shut down. We had Google released GA4, which may not have impacted a lot of people, but for me, my data's never going to be in the same place again, right? And now we have AI, which may be taking over everything we do. If there was ever a time to feel the weight of that stewardship and the weight of that change and to cower, now would be that time. And I think we all hit that at certain points. But as I read the parable of the talents, one thing that really struck me is the two that did well. The master didn't say, "You did well, you no longer have to be a steward," right? He said, "You did well, you'll be entrusted with more. Now come enter the joy of your master." And that is really a strong mind shift for me. And I know as ministry leaders, there is a weight, right? You want to handle your content well. You want to stay true to your theology. You want to make sure that you're investing in the right things that are going to cause more of a kingdom impact. And oftentimes that weight can make us forget that we're here for a plan. You're here today because you're part of God's plan. You're in charge of your ministry and in charge of your communications because that's part of God's plan. Not because you're super geniuses, which you may be. I'm not here because I'm a super genius, but I'm here because it's God's will. And rather than fearing the weight of stewardship, I just really wanted to encourage you today to just bask in the joy of your master. And so as we leave, I want you to think about AI. Hopefully I challenge you to think about AI in terms of amplifying the voice that you've been entrusted with rather than replacing it. And so hopefully I'm sure you're feeling the weight of stewardship, but hopefully you're also experiencing the joy of the master. Thank you.